With a traditional radio, the hardware is king. It dictates absolutely everything the radio can and can't do. So if you needed to switch frequencies or change your modulation, well, you often had to switch out your entire equipment. And in today's fast-paced, net-centric battle space, carrying 5 different radios for 5 different jobs, that's just not going to work.
So what if a radio wasn't just the static, fixed piece of hardware? What if it could be a dynamic, intelligent tool that adapts on the fly? And that's the big question we're going to tackle today, as we dive deep into software-defined radio and its even smarter cousin, cognitive radio.
All right, here's the game plan for our journey. We're going to start with the foundation, the very flexible software-defined radio, or SDR. Then we'll peek under the hood at its components and where it's used. After that, we'll meet its intelligent counterpart, the cognitive radio, the radio with a brain. We'll break down exactly how it thinks, and finally, we'll see how it stacks up against some other really advanced techniques out there.
Okay, so let's kick things off with the technology that really started this whole revolution, software-defined radio. This is the bedrock of all modern adaptive communication.
So the real game changer here is who's doing the work. With SDR, all those complicated jobs like modulation and decoding, things that used to be physically burned into circuits, are now handled by software. What you've basically got is a really versatile radio receiver, the front end, that's hooked up to a powerful computer that does all the heavy lifting.
And this is where it gets really interesting, especially for military applications. Reconfigurability means you can literally change what the radio does in the middle of a mission. Interoperability is huge. A single radio can talk on different networks just by loading new software. We call this new software a waveform, and it's kind of like a personality pack for the radio. It's also future-proof, because new standards are just a software update away. No need to buy a whole new box. And maybe most critically for survival, it gives you powerful new ways to cut through enemy jamming and background noise.
So we get why SDR is such a big deal, but how does it actually work? What's an SDR really made of? And where are we seeing this technology pop up today?
The easiest way to think about it is as a 2-part system. You've got the hardware part, which is all the stuff that physically touches the radio waves, the antenna, the RF front end, and the converters that turn analog signals into digital ones. But, the real magic happens in the software. That's where all the complex stuff like protocol processing, encryption, and error correction takes place.
And this right here, this shows you exactly how that signal travels. The antenna grabs the signal out of the air. The flexible hardware tunes into the right frequency. The converters digitize it, and from there, the software completely takes over. It does all that heavy lifting in what's called baseband processing, which is really just the core work of making sense of the signal.
And this technology? It's everywhere. For the military, it's all about that real-time flexibility and secure command during a crisis. But I'll bet you have SDR technology in your pocket right now. In the commercial world, a single SDR chip inside your smartphone is what lets it handle Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, GPS, and your cell signal all at once.
Okay, so we've got the flexible body of the SDR down. Now, it's time to give that body a brain. This is the next giant leap in the evolution of radio tech.
I absolutely love this analogy because it just clicks, right? SDR gives you the versatile physical platform, the body. But cognitive radio, or CR, is the intelligence that sits on top, making that platform autonomous and aware of its surroundings.
So what exactly does this brain do? Well, a cognitive radio is programmed to constantly sense its environment. It's always listening, always looking for open channels, and it automatically changes its own settings to dodge interference and find the clearest signal path. This entire process has a name: dynamic spectrum management.
But how does this thinking process actually work? How does the radio make these smart decisions? Well, it all comes down to a really clever continuous loop called the SET cycle.
Okay, before we dive into the SET cycle itself, you got to understand the 4 main jobs this cognitive engine is constantly juggling. It's controlling its power output so it doesn't step on other signals. It's sensing the spectrum to find empty spaces. It's managing that spectrum to pick the best channel available. And it's handling mobility, which means it can seamlessly hop to a new frequency if the one it's on suddenly gets crowded.
And here's where it all comes together in that SET cycle. It's a 4-step process. First, the radio scans the spectrum, looking for an open slot. Then, it exchanges that information with other friendly radios in the network. Based on that shared info, they all agree on which unused frequency they're going to use. And finally, they transmit the data. And this loop just runs over and over, making the entire network incredibly resilient and super efficient.
Now, it's good to know that not all cognitive radios are built the same. We can basically sort them in two main ways. First is by what they observe. A full CR is looking at every possible parameter you can think of, while a spectrum sensing CR is focused just on the radio frequencies. And second is by what channels they can use. Licensed band radios can use both private, assigned frequencies and public ones, whereas unlicensed band radios stick only to the public airwaves.
Okay, to really get a handle on what makes cognitive radios so special, let's put it side by side with another piece of cool tech you might have heard of, the intelligent antenna.
This chart lays it all out. The main goal of a cognitive radio is to share the frequency spectrum. It does this by sensing where the empty gaps are and jumping into them to avoid causing interference. An intelligent antenna, on the other hand, is all about reusing physical space. It uses fancy antenna arrays and spatial coding to actively cancel out interference, which allows multiple users to transmit in the very same area. So you see, there are two brilliant solutions to two totally different problems.
All right, let's make this real. Picture this. A tactical unit is on a mission, and suddenly their communications are being hit with heavy enemy jamming. With a traditional radio, that's it. They're cut off, they're deaf and dumb, and the mission is in serious trouble.
But if that unit has cognitive radios, something incredible happens. The radio's brain instantly detects the jamming. It doesn't wait for the operator to flip a switch or dial a new channel. On its own, it automatically scans the entire spectrum, finds a clean little hole in all that noise, and then uses that seat cycle we just talked about to tell all the other friendly radios, hey, let's move the conversation over here.
And the result? The unit's communications just continue, seamlessly. From the operator's point of view, they might not even know they were being jammed. The conversation never stopped. The technology autonomously and instantly solved what could have been a mission-ending or even life-ending problem.
All right, so let's boil this all down. What are the big takeaways? First, software-defined radio is the flexible body, swapping out fixed hardware for adaptable software. Second, cognitive radio is the intelligent brain that sits on top of that body, performing what we call dynamic spectrum management. Third, its core thinking process is that seat cycle: scan, exchange, agree, and transmit. And finally, remember that cognitive radio is all about sharing frequency, while intelligent antennas are about reusing space.
So that leaves us with one final really important question to chew on. We know our airwaves are getting more crowded every single day. And it's not just enemies you have to worry about, but also friendly forces, different government agencies, even civilian networks, all trying to use the same limited space. So how does an intelligent, cooperative process like the SEAC cycle become the absolute key to maintaining clear, reliable communication in that incredibly complex environment?